Putting your money where your heart lives is a great way to help yourself relax.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Joined here by Doug Wilmore, CEO of WorldTree. WorldTree is a brand name in the regulated crowdfunding space. Over 8 rounds, significant amounts raised, one of the top issuers to date. Going to be speaking about the entire business model and how investors can earn as trees, as hardwoods, as lumber is grown. We're going to go into the concept that created the company WorldTree. Just had the opportunity to see Doug speak at a pitch competition. Have been looking forward to this discussion and getting more detail here. Doug, thanks for taking the time to join.
Jason, thanks a bunch. I appreciate the invitation. Pleasure to be here. I always love talking about the WorldTree story because I think there's so many things that are part of it that can help others in the industry, founders, people growing a company, people investing in companies, people wanting to make a difference. I think we've got lots of those pieces in our story and love sharing it. And not just the great things, but the struggles and the things
Yes,
learned along the way. Yeah.
absolutely. They make entrepreneurship sound easy, smooth path, just grow a company. We know that not to be true. And too much is focused on success. Being able to work through the obstacles, to be able to manage to a point of effectiveness is a big deal.
Yeah.
And you've been able to do that. How did you get involved with WorldTree? What's your career background? Would love
Yeah.
to familiarize the audience a bit.
Yeah, sure. So the founder of WorldTree, we're female founded. Wendy Burton founded WorldTree, and Wendy saw me speak at a conference about 10, sorry, I was going to say 10 years ago, 6 years ago. And sort of, she was looking for someone to really scale WorldTree at the time. I think at the time they had 7 employees, were just sort of getting started. And so, we stayed in touch, and one thing led to another. I joined as the CEO to really help scale us. And I have a background in that. So I've done a number of other successful startups. My last one had a really successful exit. It was in the healthcare industry. We were a research cancer laboratory. And had a really, really great company there and a great exit. We didn't need to raise any capital with that. I mean, it was all our own money, and so it was really easy growth and an easy exit. And after that, I spent time in the public sector. I mean, I didn't really need to earn money. I loved the work. I loved giving back, and I was the manager of Salt Lake County in Utah, so that $800 million budget, and then city manager of 3 cities in California. Before it was really, I was looking at climate change as sort of one of the issues of our times. And I thought, the private sector is the key to solving this. You have to show people that you can make money and make an impact at the same time. And so I started to look for another opportunity to go back to the private sector to lead and build a company. And that was the same time when I met Wendy, and she was looking. And so it was kind of a perfect match, if you will, that we really hit it off. The visions were the same. And so I think at the time, we probably had about 700 acres planted. Now we're 7,000. So we've grown quite a
10x.
bit. We've got a $300 million asset base, trees that we planted in the ground. Well, we'll talk more about that. But, and so we've gotten to this point, but now we've got another chance to take a big step up over the next few years. And that's what we're looking to do.
Amazing. I love
Yeah.
how you had your exit and around an impact project,
Yeah.
cancer treatment,
Yeah.
healthcare, and you were choosing to put time into areas that you thought you could be impactful.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, city manager, public sector, move into private. how did you choose trees? I mean, obviously the conversation with
Yeah,
Windy and what World Tree is doing, but you wanted to put time into climate change. You wanted to
yeah,
have your touch, your efforts into this area.
yeah,
Tell us more about why World Tree makes such a big difference, makes such a,
yeah,
a meaningful step
yeah.
towards,
You
positive
know, well, first
environment.
of all, I was sort of driven by, I remember something I read years ago that I've, I don't assert this as the truth, but it's been a good guiding light for me. The surest way to lose romance in your life is to do things just for money. And so I can point to everything in my career, certainly after my 20s, when 20s are a lot about learning and, what are you up to? What are you good at? What do you like? But after that, everything I've done, I've focused on the purpose, not just the wealth building or the income generating. That's really stood the test of time for me, is make makes that hard work feel extra worthwhile. So that's one thing I'd say. Second thing, for me is I was working in government. I was a city manager at cities in California, very progressive, sort of liberal state and cities. And I was looking at, the issue of climate change, which I think is an important one.
Oh yeah.
And I saw that, man, if we're going to trust government to make a significant difference here, it's not going to be enough. Just not enough. So when I looked at it, I thought, like I said, the key is climate change, or is the private sector. That's the key. You've got to show people that impact and profits aren't mutually exclusive. You can actually create a company that produces a positive impact and at the same time produces wealth and income and profits. And so, and so I came home one night after a city council meeting, told Annette, my wife, hey, I'm going to go back to the private sector. And she said, how come? I told her why. She said, okay, fine with me. And then it was just by luck that I sort of, met Wendy at a conference and stayed in touch. And it was the perfect timing for World Tree that they were looking for a way to really scale. And it says a lot about Wendy. First of all, that she'd founded World Tree as a for-profit company. So most people, when they think about trees, it's either big timber, big forestry companies, or it's philanthropy. You're donating money to plant trees or whatever. And Wendy specifically founded World Tree, and we'll speak about why and how she did. Specifically, that one of the principles was, I want to show people that you can make a profit while making a difference. And I think that was really important. It certainly fit with my vision and fit with, sort of wanting to grow in this space and make a difference in this space. Then the other thing that really fit, and I think this is, again, I don't assert this is the truth. It's something that's worked really well for us. Wendy and then her partners, sort of early on, Kathy Key, her sister Angela Burton, they really believed in partnering in their way to the top. Not, we've got to do it all ourselves. We've got to do it on our own. And that really fit with my vision of what the future would look like too, is that you can leverage so much more if you have partners as opposed to if you try and do it all yourself. Your capital goes a lot further. You get a lot further. You can head down the road a lot quicker with partnering. Now, I don't say that's the solution for everyone, but it's certainly been a winner for us. And it's one of the ways how we've grown. And it's one of the reasons why I think we've been such a great fit for crowdfunding, for our community rounds every year, as we call it. We've just been a really great fit for that. And it's made such a difference for us.
So those community rounds and why it's made a difference. How large are your communities at this point? I know you guys have thousands of investors, even larger email and
Yeah,
social audiences.
yeah.
How many people are now involved with World Tree?
We have close to up to 2,000 investors. So we raise money every year.
Mhm.
We do a new round every year. Typically, maybe like March all the way through October, November, kind of a timing like that. Started all with crowdfunding, and then we do a crowdfunding round and a Reg D for accredited investors, but it's
Commitment letter.
investing into the same program every
Mm.
year. And what that program is doing is planting trees. And one of the reasons, and it's trees for profit. So Wendy was a retail finance professional, heard about this really unique, friendly, fast growing hardwood that regenerates after you harvest. Heard about this at an investment conference, a timber conference, as she's a finance professional, and thought, wow, this is amazing. Her drive was to protect native forests from over harvesting, logging, things like that. And she thought, hey, this fast growing hardwood tree that's really friendly, that you harvest it for lumber after 10 years and it regrows, and it will do that for up to 5 generations. So she checked it out, and no one had ever commercialized it in North America. So she started a company, but like many entrepreneurs, you don't know what you don't know. If she knew now if she knew then what she knew now, what she knows now, she may never have started it because, like many entrepreneurial journeys, lots of challenges, lots of issues, lots of things to solve. I saw an interview with the founder and CEO of NVIDIA,
Okay.
$4 trillion company, I think now, most valuable company in the world. He was asked straight out if he knew 20 years ago what he knows now, but he started this. He said no. He said no. Anyway, I say this because, Wendy had this idea. And one of the things, I mean, a forestry timber company is capital intensive.
Oh yeah.
It's like you got to buy property, you got to buy trees, you got to let them grow, you got to maintain them. Where's the capital going to come from? And so she and Kathy came up with this idea that we're going to partner with farmers. So we don't have to buy property. We don't have to buy property. Farmers are going to put up the property and share in the profits. And we have a waiting list of really great farmers to come in every year. And that sort of model was perfect to pair with community rounds, crowdfunding. It was perfect that, we call it democratizing the movement, that
Mm.
we're giving people an opportunity to offset their own personal carbon footprint with an investment, that they can invest in this. They get a share of the profit when we harvest in 8 to 10 years and, can get a return on that, and yet they've also offset their own personal carbon footprint for themselves, for their family. And so it was kind of a perfect pairing that, hey, we're going to partner with small farmers. Let's go to retail investors, to, smaller investors to partner with this. Now we've had some larger investors come in there. We've raised almost $18 million now, and we've had a couple $1 million check sizes, a couple 500,000, but the average check size through the whole time has been, something like 4,000 or something like that. So that's kind of been the average for us. Typical minimum size for us every year is like 1,200. So it's not as small as some of the crowdfunding you see out there, but
Yeah.
and we've tried smaller. We've tested a lot of different things, and this is kind of our sweet spot. It really fits with us, and going lower doesn't seem to give us much of a benefit.
Yeah, it's that average investment and at volume, how that stacks up. So here in 4,000, which is higher than many Reg CF
Yeah.
issuers. Last year, the average was $1,500 across
Yeah.
all 1,400 some odd Reg CF campaigns.
Yeah.
Even Regulation A plus, the average was about 2,300.
Yeah.
So while I'll see Regulation A plus campaigns that we work on, and $5,600 plus as a average conversion on the pixel on the tracking mechanism, the $4,000 number is huge. And like you said, with the
Yeah.
community, and I just think it's such a great thing all around. Grow
Yeah.
trees, make a profit, sharing that with the community, help save the planet. I
Yeah.
think so many of us have that interest of,
Yeah.
okay, have some disposable capital. I should invest it. I should also do something good, something
Yeah.
charitable.
Yeah.
Wow, what if there was a way to do both? And then how do you look for it? How do you have enough
Yeah.
time at the end of the day to go on to Google or ChatGPT and find the right opportunities? So when it gets presented in front of someone and it's saying, hey,
Yeah.
we're working with these farmers,
Yeah.
7,000 acres, take a look at how this wood compares to other products out there in the market, and how we're able to continue investing into these farms. And
Yeah.
we have a list
Yeah.
of more individuals, more groups that we want to get involved with.
Yeah.
It's such a great thing for all sides of the table.
Yeah. 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 Listen, we totally agree. We're really enthusiastic about this program. It's how we've scaled. Again, I mentioned early on, we've got 7,000 acres planted now over the last 9 years. Lumber in the ground worth more than $300 million. And we have to admit, Jason, we surprised ourselves when, good, no, because we started this small. You start with, I mean, the first year, like 75 acres being planted like that, and you start to focus on solving issues, solving problems, not just on the raise side, but on the operation side. How do we get better and better and better?
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the operation side, but then how do we, because capital is still one of our biggest, the biggest limiter for us is how do we scale what we're doing, how we're doing, and we continue to try new things and work on new things. And we continue to get challenges out there in the world. But as we've scaled this over 9 years and up to this, really, again, like I say, we surprised ourselves when we looked at how valuable our asset base was. And then we started to calculate the carbon, sequestration. Because the huge benefits here are profits to investors, to farmers, to World Tree shareholders, number one. Number two, uh, profits for farmers where they weren't making any money before on fallow acreage or idle acreage or degraded acreage, and bringing kids back to a farm because there's a bigger future. And then the third thing is returns to, investors. But then the last thing is one of the huge benefits is carbon sequestration. So the whole plan is we're growing this fast growing tree. We harvest it in 10 years for valuable lumber. It goes into high value, high end products, guitars, surfboards, boats, cabinets, furniture, because it's really high end lumber. And that carbon is sequestered as long as that product is around. So 50 years, 100 years, like that. And so, with the amount of trees we've planted through this year, we will have offset the carbon footprint of Boulder, Colorado.
Wow.
And you think, that famous quote from Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small, committed group of people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And so, 2,000 small investors, 350 small farmers in World Tree have offset the carbon footprint of Boulder, Colorado, doing our own little thing. And so we're really working to scale now from 7,000 to 50,000 acres over the next 4 or 5 years, and figuring out ways to do that because this whole model really makes an impact. We'll be doing our first harvest next year. So we'll be paying out profits to our very first farmers and investors. And man, the last 4 or 5 years, we just really have it down. We're projecting profits higher than what the program projected to investors early on, both in lumber pricing, both in yield, a bunch of things. And so we're really excited about where we're at. And need neck deep into how do we get to the next big level.
How big can you go? What are the next levels? I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
Boulder, Colorado's out there, a lot to offset,
you know,
and you guys are growing substantially. So just curious on what that looks like.
yeah, if we got to 50 or 60,000 acres, that would offset the carbon footprint of San Francisco.
Big city, yeah.
And listen, 50,000 acres is nothing in the forestry world. I mean, to think that, oh, you'll be too big and start to saturate the market. Our market that we focus on selling in is $170 billion in North America. That's guitars, surfboards, again, all those things that I talked about, furniture, cabinets, fencing, everything like that. It's a huge market. There are huge climate change related shortages in those markets that you may not read about on the front page of Wall Street Journal, whatever you read. But if you're in the business and we're talking to people, Fender and Gibson are looking for replacements to ash because it's on its way to commercial extinction because of climate change. Redwood, Western red cedar, birch, beech, all those are on their way to commercial extinction. And we're not growing trees fast enough to keep up with demand. We lose tree cover in the US every year. And so, we always sort of experimenting with finding the balance between focusing on impact and returns. And I tend to focus probably more on impact, and maybe I should do more on returns. But we find our investors; they're investing for both. They're
Oh,
not
yeah.
donating money, but we do find we have very few people that invest just for the returns, which we think are pretty robust, and it's a pretty cool program. Not many smaller investors have an opportunity to invest in forestry, right? You just
Mhm.
don't get that opportunity. So we think that's pretty cool, but the impact side is really awesome also.
Sure. The return levels beat out other opportunities. Like you said, there's not much deal flow that passes through my desk, at least that looks like that. And I love the quote you made earlier of money takes the romance out of things. I think
Yeah.
I'm a little off on how you said it, but I do see the blend. There's a quote that I subscribe to. It's simple in nature for me. Of business is the monetization of value.
Yeah.
So you're
Pretty
putting
cool.
out better products, they last longer, offset carbon footprint just in that
Yeah.
regard. You're helping out the farmers. Want to talk a bit more about the trees as well too.
Yeah.
Empress trees, they grow 3 times faster than other hardwoods. And I know you were showing some examples during your pitch at
Yeah.
Super Crowd, and I was really mesmerized by how much better quality you guys are producing with the Empress trees. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, just in case
Yeah,
anyone's not
so
as
it's a unique species that used to be native to North America. It's
mhm.
really friendly to nature, very benign, non-invasive. So it's easy to get crowded out by nature, but it's a perfect lumber species to farm because it is non-invasive. It is very friendly, benign. It takes care and cultivation. So typically, in 10 years, we'll have a 60-foot tall tree, 18 inches in diameter, produces beautiful, high quality lumber. Think of, the veneers on, the dashboard in your car, your cabinet facing high end furniture. I mean, we're selling to guitar companies right now, so think of those finishers, but furniture, all sorts of things like that. It produces high quality lumber like that. And then it regrows after you harvest it, which is just unbelievable. And that was one of the things that really struck Wendy when she first encountered the talk about this species at this timber conference. That just like, wow, this is amazing. This is a perfect way to protect native forests and old growth forests and things like that. And so it's just really unique, friendly. It takes specialized knowledge to grow it. So, for example, if you asked me to send you some startlings, whatever. If you asked me to send you some seeds, I would, and you couldn't grow them. So that's number one. They very, very tough, even to grow from seed. We start with tissue in a laboratory. But then if I sent you some young trees and you just decided I'm going to plant them in my backyard, whatever, 80% chance that most of them would die. They
Mm.
take real specialized care, cultivation, the first couple of years to get established, and then they really are drought tolerant and really take off and do well. Um, and that's one of the barriers that for no one ever commercialized these in North America, because I mean, while we've done a 9 years of planting and investing, it's also 9 years of R&D.
Yeah.
You know, your motto, test, optimize, scale, we've done that on the operation side. It's like, okay, let's get, and we've got it to the point now where I think you saw some of the photos at Super Crowd. It's like, I mean, we have 25, 30-foot tall trees on some of our farms in the first year. So we've got it down as far as matching genotype with environment, soil type, nutrition regimen, all that stuff that has really made a difference. And it's a really cool thing to introduce. And then the other thing that was missing, why no one ever commercialized it here? Because you could say, hey, I want to grow this, and I'll talk about some of our famous independent growers. Um, there was no one developing a market for it. It's a big deal for a guitar company to switch woods. They need different machinery, blades, sanding methods, staining methods. They heat their wood to produce different tonal qualities. The kind of wood means different. I mean, it's a massive thing for them to change. And so you had to have a company willing to do both.
Mm.
Invest on the growing side and invest on building the market. And so that's what Wendy took on when she founded World Tree. And that's where we've sort of found us at this point where really just this huge asset base starting to sell large amounts into the market and with I think, a really bright future. But none of it was possible without crowdfunding.
And how did you first choose to go down that crowdfunding road? I mean, it's an obvious
Yeah.
fit in line with your mission. You
Yeah.
talked about it a bit in terms of growing the community, but where did
Yeah.
you first learn about Reg CF?
Yeah.
Where did you say, hey, this is exactly what World Tree
Yeah.
needs?
Wendy and Kathy made that decision before I joined World Tree a couple of years before. Um, Actually, yeah, 2 years before. And it was, so many founders out there can tell you they couldn't get money from institutional sources. Wendy had done a seed round to help get the company started from friends and family, but then how do you actually raise the money to fund an operation to provide high quality plant material, to train farmers, to oversee, to work, to all that stuff? And it needed capital every year. And there weren't institutions willing to do that. In fact, when I joined and I had some contacts institutionally, and I was talking to a pretty large investment bank on Wall Street, and they told me, said, wow, we just love everything you're doing here. The one thing though, we don't like the small farmers part. Can you do the program without the small farmers? It was too risky.
Huh.
It was too risky. That's all. And so that's, I think, what they found, that individuals had a vision that institutions didn't. And so it's the 2,000 individuals that have invested into this eco-tree program over the years, over the 9 years, that have gotten us to where we are, that have said, hey, I believe in this vision. And they were right. They were right to believe in it. And but it was sourced by, I don't think they could get funding elsewhere from institutions. Now, as we're bigger now, institutions are much more willing and able
Sure.
to look at things. We may take some of that funding as we scale. But at the source, our very ethos is this eco tree program and getting in small investors, working with small farmers, and doing that as well as we can, as profitably as we can.
I like it a lot. And it's funny to hear that's what some of the responses were from the VCs, from the institutions. I've heard all different types of feedback and pushback that founders received. I wouldn't have guessed it was going to be around the small farmers. You think that's such an important element of this,
Yeah.
and really, the right approach holistically for everyone, even just for the opportunity and the way you guys are able to access this acreage. So
Yeah.
I think it,
Jason, I want to say one other thing there.
yeah, please.
And believe me, this is really to point out the growth that's needed in the industry. There's lots of impact focused funds or institutions that are impact focused now or that have that name or that title. You sit down with them, most of the due diligence is on the finance side.
Yeah.
It's not on the impact side. It's on the finance side. And I've actually brought this up to a few large family offices that had really built a new mission around impact. And then they talked to us and we worked with their staff. 100% of their work was on diligencing the finance side. And, I brought that up to some of those family office managers. It's like, you got to find a way to line up your operations with what you say your mission is. So I think there's still a lot of work in the industry that someone can say we're focused on impact, but it doesn't live yet in the operations of how they're running their business. It's still primarily finance focused, and so I think one of the things you find with crowdfunding, you see individuals that are willing to see a vision or take a risk that an institution may not take. Um, Small farmers being one, or we've heard the thing, oh, we love this, but we need to see large offtake agreements.
Okay.
You can't get that until you have more supply. The biggest risk we have is lack of supply, or the biggest issue we have in the market is lack of supply. So anyway, we hear those things and we continue to, it's one of the reasons why I think individual investors have remained a key part of our growth pathway and will continue to, as they really get us, they see us, they get the vision, they care about impact. And then, the final thing I'll say about it is I tell people, especially in today's times, many people would describe today's world as chaotic and, all sorts of stuff going on. Man, putting your money where your heart lives is a great way to help yourself relax. Putting your money in things you care about is a great way to calm the mind. And we tell that to people is that no, this isn't a place to put your whole portfolio, but 1% of it, 2% of it, 5%, and feel good about it. Know that you've offset your own family's carbon footprint for the next 10 years. That's pretty darn good. At least you can feel really good about that investment compared to other investments that are just, finance based or whatever. Yeah.
Retail investors, when polled, are far more passionate about what they're actually putting their dollars behind.
I didn't know that, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. When I speak to equity crowdfunding investors, they're usually talking to me about the founder, the CEO, the team, the mission, that they want to be along for the ride. When I
Yeah.
speak to an accredited investor about, let's say, a real estate project, IRR, they're talking to me about their returns, their numbers, and almost getting to the product, the company at a later point in the discussion.
Yeah.
Similar to what you said about the institutions, where they're not measuring the impact. Maybe
Yeah.
that's more of a, nonprofit, some type of, accelerator that's focused around impact. And I go back to measurability, limited measures with numbers,
Yeah.
impact, and what's occurring globally.
Yeah.
It's funny how you say, relax the mind, calm down, everything that's going on in this crazy world, which is something people around me are saying on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I go to trees in the winter. It's snowboarding, and I'm off in the powder, and
Awesome.
there's
Yeah.
some calming effect. In the
Yeah.
summer, it's being out at the beach, different type of tree, but there's
Yeah.
trees. It's being out on the
Sure.
golf course,
Yeah.
and it for me is something that's going to outlive me as an individual,
Yeah.
all of us perhaps. You see those videos, pictures of what the earth will look like after us potentially, and
Yeah.
not to take it to a dark place as much as
Sure.
it's trees,
Yeah.
it's the greenage, it's nature. And if we can have a stronger environment, if we can have a positive effect on climate change, and even just what we're putting out there, they say reduce, reuse, recycle. Learned a long time ago, if the products I buy last for longer and I have to consume less, what a
Yeah.
difference that makes, especially
Yeah.
when you multiply that across billions of people. So
Yeah.
I just really have my hats off to what you guys do,
Yeah.
where you're putting your time, how you're increasing the holdings for your investors along the way, but while
Yeah.
doing something that's meaningful for everyone.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. There's a famous, I think it's unattributed, this quote, but the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And it's really like, yeah, we tell people World Tree is not replacing the need to reforest the planet. There's a place for philanthropy, uh, charitable giving, because we need to reforest wild places.
Hmm.
But what we're doing is protecting those places from logging, over harvesting,
Yeah.
things like that. And so, yeah, it just feels so good. I mean, I can say, have working in the industry, we love what we do. It helps me sleep at night, knowing that we're making a difference, making an impact. And I've also read about climate change that one of the reasons individuals don't take action about climate change, which, by the way, probably one of the big ghosting events of our lifetime is maybe large corporations getting individuals to think that climate change is their obligation to solve rather than large corporations being a big part of the program. But having said that, one of the reasons individuals don't take action is they don't know what to do. They think, okay, I can recycle, I can do, but what else am I going to do? Not everyone can afford to buy an EV or put solar panels on their house or, whatever else. Yes, they can consume less, they can make different buying patterns, but one of the things you can do is invest in things that really make a difference that are solving issues like World Tree, like other possibilities out there, as that, yeah, this is a way you can make a difference and make an impact and get returns at the same time.
Hmm. I believe that's a big part of why RegCF was created. I serve on the Crowdfund Professional Association board. Some of the originators of the Jobs Act have said very similar things in the types of companies that they want to be fueling with this vehicle. So I'm rooting you guys on. It's
Yeah.
great to see how this round is successful and what's coming next. What recommendations would you have for founders who are tuned in right now? Could also be marketers, VC industry professionals looking at one of their portfolio projects. What should
Yeah.
they be testing out towards their growth, or if they're
Uh,
going to go down the equity crowdfunding road towards the success of investor acquisition?
well, a couple things I'd say, and I think part of this, and you know this, Jason, because you're in the industry. I tell almost everyone, get a professional to help you. The algorithms change so much, so often, so frequently. It used to be 7 years ago, sort of a neophyte could spend some time and figure it out a bit. Not anymore. You've got to be a professional. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to have a ton of experience. So that's one thing I'd say. So folks like DNA, yourself, and few other top firms, or we're with Dealmaker Reach,
Hmm.
their team there that does our marketing for us. So that's one thing I'd say. The second thing, and I said this at SuperCrowd, find your leverage point. You know, that again, that famous saying, give me a, what is it? Give me a lever and the right fulcrum and I can move the world, or something like that. I know I butchered
Heard
that,
that. Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, but so for us, the small farmer is what allows us to turn 17, $18 million into 300 million.
Yep.
Finding them to partner with. And so I'd invite anyone starting is there a way for you to leverage this thing that you're creating into something much bigger by having a particular partner in a particular way? So the farmer for us means we don't have to spend money on property. If we had to buy all that property, that 17 million would have about $75 million worth of trees,
Mhm.
not 300. And so we've made a much bigger difference and produced a better return for everybody because we're willing to give someone a slice of the pie, the
Mhm.
goal with being make the pie bigger. And so that's the last thing I'd say is, we really work on a world tree that all of our actions are driven by that big pie that we're enlarging and making bigger and bigger and bigger. We're willing to give people a piece of the pie because our goal is to be at 60,000 acres, 70,000 acres, 100,000 acres, and have that asset base be well past a billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, all trees sucking down carbon. So that's the thing that drives our actions, and that informs us a lot more as to bringing in partners to work with who can help us scale much quicker um, than if we were trying to do everything on our own. And those would be the probably the three biggest things I'd say. Get a professional to help you, find your leverage point, and then keep your eye on the future and have all your actions be driven by that future you want instead of something in the past that didn't work or whatever.
And that expression of make the pie bigger is so important. So many people are fighting over the pie right now. I was
Yeah,
told if there's too much on your plate, you need a bigger plate. If the pie's too small, you need a bigger pie. So bring in the right partners. As you said earlier, it's all about teams, teamwork to hit the biggest
yeah,
goals, even if they're small teams, but being able to bring in the right people, those who've been down this path before. I like the leverage point. For us, I say I look to identify pockets of performance in
yeah. That's a
traffic
good point.
analytics and
Yeah,
then do more of what's working. So that's
yeah,
what I'm hearing is find that leverage point,
yeah,
build off of that, scale it quicker,
yeah,
and being able to have your eyes on the future. How are
yeah,
we going to hit the next
yeah,
milestones? How are we going to make this pie bigger?
yeah,
What if it's not working right out of the gate? And I know many founders find themselves in that place, that situation, or even just a
yeah,
slower month, slower week.
yeah.
What are the approaches, the tactics towards
Yeah,
optimization that you and the team use?
everything, especially if you look at the funding side and the crowdfunding side, everything's a learning experience. So even when you've started a campaign and it hasn't started off well, there's lots of things to learn there, lots of things to work with, to experiment with, to things like that. So that's one thing I'd say. Number two, again, and this is always a difficult line to walk, is how do you stay committed to your plan A while you've already got a plan B and C in the background? Because
Yeah.
the plan B and C almost sounds like you're going to pull the plug on plan A. And yet, we always try and work to have a plan B and C in the background if the plan A isn't working. And on the funding side, that's really what we're focusing on. So, for example, on our crowdfunding and Reg D this year, we're below where we expected to be. And the key reason for that is the US's or Canada's upset with the US based on what the current administration has done. Because our founder is Canadian, we have Canadian employees. It turned out a number of our early investors in the EcoTree program are from Canada. and they invested every year. They treated it like an annuity, which is invest money, and every year, 10 years later, I start to get payouts that are 4 to 7 times what I invested. And so they felt good about what they're doing, and they did that. But this year, and I talked to a lot of our Canadian investors, they said, we don't want to be part of a US company. We don't trust your government. We don't trust. So that was a big hole in our repeat funding that we planned on. So we're in the plan B part right now. Is that part of a, now again, it has us be about 500,000 below where we'd expect to be at this point. So it's not like oh my gosh,
Right.
what are we going to do? But it's significant enough to make a difference that okay, we have to be looking at where are we going to fill that gap elsewhere because it's not going to come from our normal Canadian repeat investors. So yeah, that's always looking. This stuff happens and Meta changes their algorithm or Apple changes something on privacy and it throws a loop to you guys, to everybody doing that advertising and a bunch of stuff. And so you've got to be ready and willing to sort of roll with what the world is giving you. And but it's well worth it, I think, to embrace that kind of funding for your future. Wouldn't trade it for anything else compared to what the alternatives were.
Yeah, it's part of successful leadership. It's
Yeah.
like you said, you got to take the learnings and get value from that. You went through that experience. How are you better because of it? You have to look at your plan A, B, and C. You're talking about major obstacles. Canadian
Yeah.
investors saying they don't want to put funds into a US company right now. And instead of being stuck with that obstacle, you're looking at ways to excel past it and find other traffic sources, other
Yeah.
lead generation tactics. You mentioned Apple and Facebook, and I could tell you all the hurdles what
Yeah.
we had to do to change our process
Yeah.
for iOS 14.5 and later updates. But the
Mhm.
traffic still converts very well. So it was
Mhm.
worthwhile. We had to do it. What you're doing is worthwhile. You have a healthy
Yeah.
outlook towards it. You're saying, hey, it's 500,000. We have 300 million in assets and still have investors coming in
Yeah.
constantly. So it's a matter of getting to that plan B. When you know the time's right, oftentimes we'll test multiple plans at the same
Yeah.
time and then gravitate towards what's producing. Maybe not phase out the non-drivers completely, giving them more of an opportunity, but at least having more tools at work, not having
Yeah.
our hands tied to just one. What
Yeah.
about scale? You guys have done this very effectively, 700 acres to 7,000,
Yeah.
repeat rounds, all
Yeah.
successful on these crowdfunding
Yeah.
platforms. How
Yeah.
do you achieve scale? Any tips, any examples?
Yeah. So a couple things I'd say is, for us, we had to be willing to grow beyond our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know many people would say, "Oh, what are you talking about? That's easy." It's not so easy. In fact, I was, and we're actively engaged in this right now. We probably we add maybe about 1,000 acres a year through the Eco Tree program right now. I had a large investor talking to me about that before they did their investment, and they said, what would it take for you to do 25,000 acres a year? And I said, the thought of that makes my head explode. It makes my brain explode. And he said, you solve that and you've got an unbeatable company. And so we're actively engaged in how would we be able to scale the EcoTree program? Again, we've done a remarkable amount to go from 100 acres a year to 1,000 acres a year, all with small farmers, smaller investors. How could we take that up another notch? And many times the limitations are in our own brain. It's in our own mindset, it's in our own view. And so for us, it's actively looking to reinvent the way that we think, the way we see the world, our own limitations. We're usually in the way of some of the best opportunities we may have that come from our own limited thinking.
We do set our own barriers, set our
Yeah,
own walls.
yeah,
Uh, It's all perception. They say 10% of life is what happens, 90% is how we perceive it. So
Yeah.
back to
Good,
the
good point.
obstacles and how we could set a wall for ourselves or around
Yeah.
our own growth.
Yeah.
So it's great that you guys have this larger pie in mind and are committed getting there because you know the impact it's going to have. We
Yeah.
need more guitars. We need more
Yeah.
of all of these great products around us that have wood. We need sustainable growth systems to get us there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to preserve the land, like you
Yeah.
said. So many of these areas are underutilized. The more trees,
Yeah.
the better. This is what's going to
Yeah.
put us in a better future, put our next
Yeah.
generations into a better place.
Yeah. For sure. And so for anyone interested, worldtree.eco. Check
Okay.
that out. Check out our offer. We love what we do, what we have to offer. And I really appreciate the time, Jason. Really do.
My pleasure. It was very insightful. Love that we had the chance to do this. Definitely encourage everyone to head over to the site, take a look at the offering page as well too, through Dealmaker.
Yeah.
And Doug, thanks again. Really appreciate the opportunity to have you on the podcast here and share with the audience everything behind World Tree.
Thanks a bunch, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care.